Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. I've always loved adventure. In this video I will tell you how in August 2009 I became a campervan gypsy, travelling for the first time on a trip from my home in Victoria, Australia, through South Australia, across the Nullarbor Plain and into Western Australia. While holidaying in Darwin, in the top end of Australia, I crossed paths with Meg, not her real name, a woman travelling alone in her luxury motorhome. She told me about her travels, and I was in awe of her adventures and captivated by her stories. We kept in touch after we parted, and when I returned home to Victoria, rugged up in my winter woolies, I decided to take up Meg's earlier offer to join her on her travels. My ho-hum life was about to change. I rented out my home for 6 months and farewelled my safe, comfortable life in Victoria. 2 months later, I was on the road in my very own gypsy wagon, which was exactly what I needed for my trip. A comfortable place to sleep and plenty of space to store my things. Also, it was easy to get my van into small areas and easy to park in city streets. After my first day of travel to the town of Renmark in South Australia, I was exhausted. The thought of finding kitchen utensils and cooking a meal in my van was out of the question. A trip to Macca's was the answer. After my meal, I found the perfect free camp spot at the edge of town listed in my camp book. The only other camper was a man in a caravan who invited me into his van for coffee. As we chatted, we discovered that we were both heading in the same direction, to the Nullarbor Plain. I rejected his kind offer to follow him along the way, as I had only just met him. In my campervan, on my first night, as I looked at my map, it was very daunting. I felt very alone and vulnerable, thinking, what have I done? I awoke the next morning to find Keith, my fellow camper, banging on my door. Still in my PJs, I leapt out of bed. "Are you ready yet?" he called out. In the light of day, I realised just how daunting such a journey on my own would be. So I trusted my instinct and accepted Keith's offer to guide me across the Nullarbor Plain. And that's how he became my guardian angel. Keith had been an army man, having been around Australia many times. He knew the back roads well, including the must-see attractions such as whale watching. He knew when to collect firewood and wash clothes as you drive along the highway, how far to stay behind trucks and when to top up with fuel. I was fascinated by his many interesting tales and personal experiences. One such story told of Keith's home that was destroyed during Cyclone Tracy in Darwin in 1974 on Christmas Day. It was such a coincidence when the next day Keith pulled up suddenly and waved me down to tell me to listen to the song called Santa Never Made It into Darwin. This song by Bill and Boyd was so sad that it was banned for children in Darwin. I spent 6 days on the road with Keith, travelling through South Australia and into Western Australia. He was a thorough gentleman, and I was amused rather than offended when he suggested that I sell my campervan to travel with him in his caravan with his dog Rex. He said he would take me all the way around Australia and it wouldn't cost me a cent. No strings attached, he said. He just wanted company. This dear 90-year-old man, who was a rat of Tobruk in the Second World War, was a gem from another era. He insisted on inviting me for dinner, introducing me to bully beef, something I'd only heard of in war movies. He also went to the trouble to make jelly to go with our fruit salad. In return, I shouted him dinner at one of the roadhouses along the way, a rare treat for him. I was right to trust my instincts. Keith was no threat to me. If he had stepped out of line, I could have knocked him over with a feather. He was a wonderful, thoughtful companion. When his caravan awning fell apart as we were driving, I was able to help him in return for his hospitality and knowledge. The universe had provided me with a wonderful companion. It was a sad farewell as I waved goodbye to my Nullarbor guardian angel. Meg, my friend from Darwin, was waiting for me in Kalgoorlie. We were so excited to meet up with each other again. She had a bottle of wine to share with me and even had the evening meal ready for me. While we were still in Kalgoorlie, we viewed an open-cut mine from a lookout just out of town. Wow! Huge trucks looked like toys in the mine below as they wound their way up the road to the top with their full loads. The various layers of rock were displayed where the earth had been blasted and cut away. It was an awesome sight to see the rich colour of the earth. It was the perfect time of year to visit Western Australia, with the wildflowers in bloom and the mild climate. The scenery was amazing. We watched frolicking lambs in fields with a backdrop of purple hills and fantastic, delicate mixtures of form and colour, with up to 12,000 species drawing visitors from all over the world. Meg and I explored interesting buildings and the stunning views of the limestone pinnacles standing out against the bright blue sea and pure white dunes. We visited several must-see places such as Watheroo National Park and experienced New Norcia, the only monastic town in Australia, where we saw beautiful artwork and heard the religious chanting of the monks. At one of our campsites, returning from the amenities block, wrapped only in a sarong, I was struck with horror when I realised I was locked out of my gypsy wagon. Fortunately, the small window at the top of my van was open. I managed to track down a ladder, turn into Houdini and squeeze through the small opening. I felt victorious as I emerged from my gypsy wagon, waving to the audience that had gathered. Meg and I parted company on the outskirts of Perth. I went east and she went south. Alone on my homeward journey, I crossed the vast expanse of the desolate Nullarbor Plain. I felt so isolated, with only a few cars on the road. It was a welcoming sight when the truckies waved or tooted their horns as they passed me. Scenic treats included wildlife, such as emus and kangaroos. I stopped to look at the stunning steep views of the ocean at a rocky point called the Head of Bight. As I clocked up the miles, I checked out the creative, quirky features along the way. I laughed to see Australian humour when I came across a tree with ladies' underwear hanging from its branches, and another tree laden with shoes and thongs. Connecting with other travellers was interesting and helped to relieve the boredom of the flat, straight landscape. At one of my stops for a toilet break behind a bush, I unexpectedly came across two Japanese guys who were cycling around Australia on their push bikes. It was so nice to see human faces again. These lovely guys were also pleased to see me. I returned home to Victoria undefeated, with my head held high. I had overcome many challenges and gained confidence. This was my first campervan adventure and not the end of my travels, just the beginning. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.